Welcome to this JavaScript ES6 Plus Core Concept Study Guide, Part 1 of 4 from TestMole.com, where employers can test candidates and teams using pre-built or custom assessments. We also create free tests and guides like this. Please help us by liking this video. Subscribe for more study guides and free tests. And turn on notifications. Okay, let's begin. Which keyword was introduced in ES6 to declare a variable that is limited to the scope of a block statement? In JavaScript, scope determines where variables are accessible. Before ES6, var was the primary way to declare variables, but it is function-scoped, meaning it ignores block boundaries like if statements or for loops. To solve this, ES6 introduced let and const. These are block-scoped, meaning they only exist within the curly braces where they are defined. This prevents common bugs where variables leak out of loops or conditional blocks. Choose between A. var, B. let, C. global, D. define. The answer is B. Let provides block-level scoping, which is the intended behavior for modern JavaScript. Var is function-scoped, while global and define are not valid keywords for declaring block-scoped variables in this context. What happens if you try to reassign a value to a variable declared with const? The const keyword is used to declare variables that should not be reassigned. It creates a read-only reference to a value. It is important to note that const does not make objects or arrays immutable. You can still change the contents of an object or array declared with const, but you cannot point the variable name to a completely new object or value. Possible answers are A. The variable is successfully updated. B. It throws a type error. C. It throws a syntax error. D. The reassignment is ignored silently. The answer is B. Attempting to reassign a const variable triggers a type error because the identifier is read-only. It is not a syntax error because the code is syntactically correct and the engine does not ignore the violation. Which of the following is the correct syntax for an ES6 arrow function with no parameters? Arrow functions provide a shorter syntax for writing function expressions. They are particularly useful for callbacks and keeping code concise. Key syntax rules include empty parameters. Use empty parentheses equals. Single parameter. Parentheses are optional, e.g., x equals x2. Implicit return. If the function body is a single expression, you can omit the curly braces and the return keyword. Let's review the options. A. Function equals return hi. B. Equals hi. C. Equals hi. D dash hi. The answer is B. Equals hi is the correct syntax, utilizing the implicit return feature. The other options are incorrect because they either include the function keyword, use the wrong arrow symbol, dash, or lack the required parameter parentheses. Which character is used to define a template literal in ES6? Template literals are a powerful feature that allows for easier string interpolation and multi-line strings. Unlike standard strings defined with single or double quotes, template literals use backticks. Inside these backticks, you can embed expressions using the $expression syntax, which automatically evaluates the code and converts the result into a string. Possible answers are A. Single quote. B. Double quote. C. Backtick symbol. D. // symbol. The answer is C. Backticks are the specific delimiter required to enable template literal features like interpolation and multi-line support. Single and double quotes are used for standard string literals, which do not support these features. What is the .map method return? The .map method is a functional programming tool used to transform data. It iterates through every element in an array, applies a provided callback function to each one, and collects the results into a brand new array. Crucially, .map is non-mutating. It leaves the original array unchanged, which is a core principle in writing predictable, bug-free code. Let's review the options. A. The original array modified. B. A new array with the results of calling a function on every element. C. The first element that matches a condition. D. A single value, the sum of the array. The answer is B. .map creates a new array based on the transformation logic provided. It does not modify the original array, nor does it search for a single match or reduce the array to a single value. Which of the following values are considered truthy in JavaScript? Select all that apply. In JavaScript, values are evaluated as either truthy or falsy when used in Boolean contexts, like if statements. Falsy values. There are only a few: false, 0, -0, 0n, empty string, null, undefined, and nan. Truthy values. Everything else is truthy. This includes non-empty strings, all objects, and all arrays, even empty ones. Even though an empty array contains no elements, it is an object, and all objects in JavaScript are truthy. Possible answers are A. 0, B. 0 string, C. Empty array, D. Null. The answer is B and C. The string 0 is truthy because it is not an empty string, and is truthy because all objects are truthy. 0 and null are explicitly defined as falsy values. If you have a variable name and want to add it to an object with the key name, what is the ES6 shorthand? ES6 introduced property shorthand to reduce boilerplate code. When you want to create an object property where the key name matches the variable name holding the value, you can omit the colon and the repeated value. Let's review A. Name, name. B. Name. C. Name. D. Get name. The answer is B. The name syntax is the correct ES6 shorthand for name, name. Other options use invalid syntax like colons or keywords that do not perform property assignment. How do you set a default value of guest for a parameter user in a function declaration? Default parameters allow you to initialize function parameters with default values if no value is passed or if undefined is passed. Before ES6, developers often used logical OR checks inside the function body, but the modern syntax is much more declarative. If you call greet Alice, the parameter becomes Alice. If you call greet without arguments, it defaults to guest. Possible answers are A. Function greet, user guest. B. Function greet, user equals guest. C. Function greet, user guest. D. Function greet, guest as user. The answer is B. The assignment operator equals is the standard syntax for setting default parameters. The other options use incorrect operators or syntax patterns that are not valid in JavaScript declarations. Given const a, b equals 10, 20, 30, what is the value of b? Array destructuring allows you to unpack values from arrays into distinct variables using a syntax that mirrors array literals. When destructuring, the variables are assigned based on their position in the array. Any extra elements in the source array, like 30 in this case, are simply ignored unless you use the rest operator. Choose between A 10, B 20, C 30, D undefined. The answer is B. The variable b is assigned the second element of the array, which is 20. The first element 10 goes to A, and the third element 30 is ignored. Which operator is used to shallow copy an object into a new object? The spread operator, allows an iterable, like an array, or an object to be expanded in places where 0 or more key-value pairs or elements are expected. When used with objects, it creates a shallow copy of the properties into a new object. This is a common pattern for immutable state updates, as it creates a new reference while preserving the existing data. Let's review the options. A, B, plus plus plus. C, equals equals equals. D, and. The answer is A. The operator is the dedicated syntax for spreading object properties. The other options are comparison operators, equals equals smiley face, logical operators, and, or arithmetic operators, plus plus plus, which do not perform object copying. What is the main characteristic of a symbol in ES6? Symbols were introduced in ES6 as a primitive data type. Unlike strings or numbers, every time you create a symbol, it is guaranteed to be unique, even if you provide the same description. This makes them ideal for creating unique object property keys that won't collide with other properties, effectively providing a form of hidden or private property behavior. Choose between A, it is a mutable string. B, it is a unique and immutable primitive value. C, it is used to store large integers. D, it is an alias for an array. The answer is B. Symbols are primitive values that cannot be changed once created, ensuring uniqueness. They are not strings, nor are they related to arrays or large integer types like bigint. What does the .find method return if no elements satisfy the testing function? The .find method executes a callback function on each element of an array until it finds one that returns a truthy value. Once found, it returns that specific element immediately. If the iteration completes without finding any match, the method concludes that no such element exists. Here are the options. A, null. B, undefined. C, D-1. The answer is B. The method returns undefined when no match is found. It does not return null, an empty array, or -1, which is the return value for .index of, when an item is missing. Which keyword is used inside a class to define the initialization method? In JavaScript classes, the constructor method is a special function that runs automatically when you create a new instance of a class using the new keyword. It is primarily used to initialize the object's properties with specific values. Possible answers are A, init, B, create, C, constructor, D, new. The answer is C. The constructor keyword is the standard syntax for class initialization. Init and create are not reserved keywords for this purpose, and new is used to invoke the constructor, not to define it. How do arrow functions handle the this keyword compared to regular functions? Regular functions in JavaScript have a dynamic this context that changes based on how the function is called. Arrow functions, however, do not have their own this. Instead, they capture the this value from the enclosing scope at the time the function is defined, making them highly predictable in callbacks and event handlers. The options are A, they have their own this context. B, they inherit this from the surrounding lexical scope. C, they set this to the global object. D, they cannot use this. The answer is B. Arrow functions lexically bind this, meaning they inherit it from the surrounding code. They do not create their own context, nor do they default to the global object or forbid the use of this. Which keyword is used to make a function available to other files in ES6 modules? ES6 modules use a standardized system to share code between files. The export keyword is used to mark variables, functions, or classes as public, allowing other files to access them using the import statement. This promotes modularity and cleaner code organization. Here are the options. A, expose. B, public. C, export. D, require. The answer is C. Export is the correct keyword for sharing module members. Require is part of the older CommonJS system, while expose and public are not valid keywords for module exports in JavaScript. Which method is used to determine whether an array contains a certain value? In JavaScript, arrays are frequently searched to verify the presence of specific elements. The .includes method is the standard approach for this task. It returns a Boolean value true if the element is found within the array and false otherwise. This method is case-sensitive and uses strict equality, similar to the == operator for comparison. Here are the options. A.has, B.contains, C.includes, D.search. The answer is C. .includes is the built-in array method for membership testing. The other options are incorrect because .has is used for sets or maps, .contains is a DOM method for nodes, and .search is a string method. What is the correct syntax for a function that accepts an indefinite number of arguments into an array named args? REST parameters allow a function to accept an indefinite number of arguments as an array. By prefixing the final parameter name with 3 dots, you collect all remaining arguments passed to the function into a single array. This is particularly useful for variadic functions where the number of inputs is not known beforehand. The options are A. Function sum, args. B. Function sum, args. C. Function sum, *args. D. Function sum, args. The answer is A. The syntax spread/rest operator must precede the parameter name. Other options like args, or args are invalid syntax in JavaScript. How do you create an object property where the keyname is stored in a variable keyname? Computed property names allow you to use an expression as an object key. By wrapping the variable or expression in square brackets, during object literal definition, JavaScript evaluates the expression and uses the resulting value as the property key. This is essential for dynamic object creation. Choose between A. Keyname, value. B. Keyname, value. C. $keyname, value. D. Keyname, value. The answer is B. Square brackets are the required syntax for computed property names. Using $ is for template literals, while parentheses or plain identifiers do not trigger dynamic key evaluation. What is the main purpose of a promise in JavaScript? A promise represents the eventual completion or failure of an asynchronous operation and its resulting value. It allows you to associate handlers with an asynchronous action's success value or failure reason, preventing callback hell and making asynchronous code easier to manage and chain. Choose between A. To store constant values. B. To handle asynchronous operations. C. To create a loop. D. To define a class. The answer is B. Promises are specifically designed to manage asynchronous flow. They are not used for constants, loops, or class definitions, which are handled by other language features. Which of the following are valid array destructuring assignments? Select all that apply. Array destructuring provides a concise syntax to unpack values from arrays into distinct variables. Basic unpacking, const x, y equals 1, 2, assigns 1 to x and 2 to y. Skipping elements, using commas without a variable name, like x, z, allows you to ignore specific positions. Rest pattern, the operator can capture remaining elements into a new array, but it must always be the last element in the destructuring pattern. Let's review the options. A. Const x, y equals 1, 2. B. Const x, z equals 1, 2, 3. C. Const x, y equals 1, 2, 3. D. Const x, y equals 1, 2, 3. The answer is A, B, and C. The first three options follow valid syntax for basic assignment, skipping elements, and rest collection. The final option is invalid because the rest element, x, must appear at the end of the destructuring pattern, not before another variable. Which loop was introduced in ES6 to iterate over the values of an iterable like an array? The for of loop, introduced in ES6, provides a clean, readable syntax for iterating over iterable objects, such as arrays, strings, maps, and sets. Unlike older loop structures, it focuses directly on the values of the collection rather than the index or property keys. Loop type iterates over primary use. For in object keys enumerating object properties. For of iterable values accessing array/collection elements. Possible answers are A for in, B for of, C for each, D while. The answer is B. The for of loop is specifically designed to retrieve values from iterables. For in iterates over property names, keys, for each is a method rather than a control flow statement, and while is a generic loop that requires manual index management. What is the primary difference between an array and a set? A set is a built-in collection object that stores unique values of any type. While an array is an ordered list that allows duplicate entries, a set automatically filters out duplicates, ensuring every element is distinct. This makes sets highly efficient for tasks like removing duplicates from an array or checking for the existence of a specific item. Let's review the options. A set cannot store numbers. B, a set only allows unique values. C, a set is much slower than an array. D, there is no difference. The answer is B. Sets are defined by their uniqueness constraint. Arrays allow duplicates, and there is no performance penalty that makes sets inherently slower. In fact, sets are often faster for membership lookups. In an ES6 map, what can be used as a key? The map object is a collection of keyed data items, similar to an object. However, the critical advantage of a map is that it allows keys of any type. While standard objects are restricted to strings or symbols as keys, map keys can be objects, functions, numbers, or even other maps, providing much greater flexibility for complex data structures. Choose between A, only strings, B, only strings and numbers, C, any value, including objects and functions, D, only symbols. The answer is C. Maps are designed to support any data type as a key. Options limiting keys to strings, numbers, or symbols describe the limitations of standard JavaScript objects, not the map collection. How do you import a default export from a file named math.js? ES6 modules use export default to designate a primary value from a module. When importing a default export, you are not required to use curly braces. Instead, you provide a name of your choice, e.g., import math from ./math.js, which will represent the default exported value from that file. Let's review the options. A, import default from ./math.js. B, import math from ./math.js. C, import asterisk as math from ./math.js. D, import math from ./math.js. The answer is B. Default imports use the identifier directly without curly braces. Curly braces are reserved for named imports, and the as syntax is used for importing all exports as a single namespace object. Which method checks if a string begins with a specified sequence of characters? The dot starts with method is a standard string prototype method that returns true if a string begins with the characters of a specified string and false otherwise. It is case-sensitive and provides a more readable alternative to older techniques like using index of == 0. Choose between A, dot begins with, B, dot starts with, C, dot is first, D, dot front. The answer is B. Dot starts with is the correct built-in method name. The other options dot begins with, dot is first, dot front are not valid JavaScript string methods. Thanks for watching. With TestMole.com, you get everything in one place, from easy candidate invites and role-based access, to deep analytics and built-in anti-cheat mechanics. We'll assess code answers, free text responses, and issue verified certificates. Ready to simplify your hiring? Give TestMole a try. And one more thing. If you like this video and want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe.